All right. Hey, Masters, welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery. And man, I'll tell you, this is episode 400, my friends. I'm excited for episode 400. We got a special treat. We got Mr. Nick Lowery with us, Kansas City Chiefs Hall of Famer, tremendous kicker, and 80% success rate. Kicking and just an awesome guy. He's part of a community I'm with Tim Story called World Shakers, and it's been great to get to know you a little bit, Nick, over the past couple months. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. We both obviously love Joe and I think it's Joe Mendoza and of course Tim Story and World Shakers. There's just a principle there that I think the older we get, most of us find ourselves saying, surrounding yourself with core values and people that have higher values and a sense of alignment, but just bringing you up to higher expectations, to goals that really inspire yourself, is like the best kind of disease. You're catching the infection, you're vaccinating yourself against negativity and towards shaking up the world with, really hopefully spiritually empowering solutions and, things that go beyond words, but people can tell, they know when they're in a better place, surrounded by better people. And that's not a judgment per se. That's simply people that bring out our best. We need that. All of us do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been part of the community for about a year now, and it just honestly, it like you ever hear that saying, you want to be the dumbest guy in the room? So I feel like that a lot of times, being in there. Definitely definitely one of the poorest guys in the room too, which I like because I want to be around people that are massively successful, right? People like you and Tim and some of the others in there, just like some of the businesses they built and just some of the things that they do, it's wild. Some of the people in that community.
Yeah. I've been lucky enough, ironically, to bring in guys that, once again, we can always oversell what lessons on the playing field apply in real life. But when you have quality people that are great people on and off the field, like Roger Clemens and like Dave Stewart,
Yeah.
both baseball legends, those were some pretty fun episodes we did. And, I just love the fact when people that have been at the highest levels of fame are such good human beings every
Yeah.
day, and Roger, I mean, David, they're both just quality people. And you can see how they were a lot of things the press never covered during their careers, that just being in the locker room with somebody like that improves the entire team immediately.
Well, you know what I really occurred to me by being listening to both of them. Both of them operated at the highest level in what in their space, in their field, and but so different, right? Like personality wise, like by like the opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Like north and south.
Yeah, well, Roger Clemens, he's become a good friend, and more so than Dave, although I love Dave just immediately, just his energy. But Roger, the kind of guy that had his boombox going on in the locker room, and he was doing karaoke with the team. So you can imagine what that did. Players that were inhibited, suddenly he made them feel unjudged, and yet they can kind of let go of a couple of those layers because you're trying to be at your best. It's a macho environment. Everybody's, competitive to the hilt and under pressure too. Some might be hitting 300 and others hitting 200 thinking I better do better. And they get uptight. And Roger Clemens bringing in, singing some of their favorite tunes before the game, after the game, just lightens them up. And usually your best performances come with that. And also your team comes together more. And with Dave Stewart, it's more, I think, intrinsically a shy guy, who's a former catcher, but he talked about where one of my great heroes, my first great heroes, were Mickey Mantle and Sandy Koufax, and how Sandy Koufax took the time. And one of the simple things he did was say, lower your brims. Think about that analogy. lower your brim. So all you see is the target.
Oh, I know that
And that
story.
suddenly took him from being inaccurate to being phenomenally more accurate, simply because he could only see, like a horse with blinders, where he was going. And he used to be wild high with a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, and suddenly he's boom zooming in. So some of us, it's not so much a change in our talent, it's simply what we focus on. And so there's a guy that was predicted himself he was never going to have much of a career, and then went on to have a 16-year career with multiple World Series, with 3 straight 20-game seasons. And an interesting thing he also said, which I really impressed me with, I never felt fear,
Mm,
which
yeah.
I don't know if I've ever heard that, but just a fearless human being. And I think probably being private, he didn't say it, but I took it that his faith gave him a sense of being fearless.
Yeah. Do you want to? And you know what? It's funny when you mentioned the rim story about the hat. It's such a
Yeah.
powerful but simple, just right, like a message, like a metaphor. Can you give us share that story? Give us the quick version of it, just so
Well,
people
I mean,
get
just
what you're talking
basically,
about.
he's in training camp, and he's, has not won a single game. And Sandy Koufax says, "Hey, will you let me help you? Will you trust me?" And he says, "Yes." I mean, this is Sandy Koufax, one of the great pitchers, one of the great performers in the history of baseball. He's only 5'10" or not. I'm not sure if he was even 6 feet tall, but he noticed he had his hat, so he said, "Why don't you pull your hat down a little further?" And he went from being wild high, maybe just the batter's strike zone is right here, and suddenly he's throwing here and here and here. And suddenly, by lowering his brim, he brought it down to here. And they said, "Lower it a little further." And he did. That was his signature. You could barely see
Mm,
him in his eyes, his killer instinct eyes, which was also, of course, nicely intimidating. And it just brought it all together. Then on top of that, Sandy also taught him how to grip the ball differently, so that he had what eventually became a fork ball. And so he became incredibly effective, because, of course, when you have a phenomenal fastball, eventually great hitters can catch up with it and time it. But if you break it off with a fork ball, suddenly you can confuse the hitters. And that's why he became, one of the great pitchers in baseball history. So interesting how the mentor figure, if we find the right one, all he cares about, or she cares about, is helping us get better. And I think one of the great untold stories, to some degree, is what a wonderful human being Sandy Koufax was and is. What
yeah.
a wonderful person. Just coming to training camp. I doubt, he was part of an era before free agency, probably hardly made anything compared to the players today. Yet his record stands above almost all of them. But he cared, he still cares, and he understands how beautiful a life lived when you become the mentor. And probably he had a mentor for him, the way I did in my career. I had a couple, and being open to that, how that creates lifelong learning, which is another part of feeling fully alive. And what's better than that?
Yeah, amen. And I'll tell you, for me, what I took from it though, is focus. The baseball cap story. I think for me, it's like,
Yeah.
just that was it. Just focus on this one. Like, you couldn't see anything else, right? Like that's and for our listeners, like,
Yes.
how many times in our business are we just so all over the place, when if we could just focus in on one thing,
Yep.
it would be the difference maker.
Yeah. Yeah. When I talk to kids teams, and I'm, I think, 43-4 talking to kids teams, but I always say to them, it's about focus and passion. And this funny thing, the phone itself, this thing we have in our hands, is both God and the devil, depending on how we use it. And it can condition us to only be stimulated with something that keeps our attention for a few seconds, as opposed to being able to look at focus and the degree to which we can still focus and signal to ourselves when we're rehearsing, or in the game itself under stress when our mind wants to go elsewhere because there's so much pressure, so much of a spotlight on us, right? As a pitcher on the mound or kicker right there with 80,000 people. My book's called Naked Alone with 80,000 People and be coming out in a couple months. It's all about that. So focus, being able to identify when you're exhausted, bored, angry, emotional, whatever that is, and being able to say, this is the moment, the crystal clear moment when I will get better if I look at it that way and apply my focus now when it's hard. I'm teaching my brain to stay focused when it matters most, and that will help you forever as a student, as a human being, and as a performer. And then bringing passion, of course, to it as well, because finding what we love doing, and of course finding what we love doing with people we love, that's the magic potion of life as I see it.
Yeah, I love it. So who, like, listen, we were going 11 minutes and we didn't even give you a bio, an introduction yet. So Nick is a Super Bowl champion, was with the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. He's the all-time leading scorer and Hall of Famer, who is the most accurate kicker in NFL history from 1980 to 1998. Also happened to work in the White House in his NFL offseason for three United States presidents. I think I cut off the end of the bio. My apologies.
That's okay.
Is that, I'm assuming presidents, it was
yeah,
what I'm missing,
yeah.
right?
I actually worked for Reagan and drug abuse policy in '88, and I would work there February, March, April, May, and then go back. I'd be training. I'd ride the bike in my house and do stomach and stretching for 40 minutes in the morning, get on my suit, drive in to the White House. I worked with Dr. Ian Donald McDonald, who was the forerunner to William Bennett as the first drug czar. He was not officially a drug czar, but he was the one in charge of drug abuse policy. And then the next year, I worked in the first Office of National Service for Greg Petersmeyer and H.W. Bush, which launched the Points of Light and the Points of Light Foundation. And then 4 years later, I worked for a Democrat, Bill Clinton, in the Office of National Service on AmeriCorps, helping that get launched because I had known and campaigned for Bob Dole back before and worked with Bob Dole's wife, Elizabeth Dole, when she was Secretary of Transportation. And I simply was able to say, national service, the opportunity for people in a non-military way to serve their country as well for 2 years to look at intractable social problems, the great poverty issues, drug issues, and community issues. That is so important to a new generation of young people searching for something that creates meaning in their lives, skill sets to make a difference, and what could be better, whether you're a Republican or Democrat. And he got out of the way of AmeriCorps, and it became the first meaningful legislation for Bill Clinton. And the irony of it is, David, is the signing of that bill was September 21st, 1993. And I was playing a Monday night game with a guy named Joe Montana leading us, and Marcus Allen, Derek Thomas, Neil Smith, all sorts of amazing guys against John Elway. And it was the first Monday night game with our new future Hall of Fame quarterback, Joe Montana. I happened to kick all 5 field goals and all our points, and we beat Denver 15-7. And I got a personal letter from Bill Clinton because I couldn't be at the Rose Garden signing ceremony. And he wrote, I'm going to try to do his accent. Thank you for all you did for the national service effort. Great game Monday night. I thought of you yesterday. All your national service pals are proud. I thought of you yesterday when I signed the bill. The kids will be better for it of this country, and so will the rest of us. Bill Clinton. And, just the wonderful sort of, incredible stories in my life, Forrest Gump-like experiences. But that came out of just loving to do something that would help this country, as we all can do, come together behind core values of serving others, helping others find meaning in their own lives.
That's amazing, man. Congratulations on all your success. I did not realize you were the all-time. Are you still the all-time scorer for KC?
I am.
Congrats.
In fact, they had me on.
Isn't that cool to keep that? You got to keep that, brother. I mean, Mahomes, I don't know, Mahomes may get you at some point, but
no, he won't because he throws touchdown passes so much more than he catches them or runs them in.
That's a
The
good point.
kicker, if
Yeah.
the kicker can
True.
hang another 5, 6 years, he might beat me. He's great, Harrison Butker. But I'm very proud of that. They actually announced they have a Chiefs History 101 segment on the big scoreboard and the announcer for all the stadium. And I'm in our El Bandito Yankee Tequila suite at Arrowhead Stadium. And I'm watching the field, and then right above it is the TV in your suite. And their so-called trivia question is who's the Chiefs all-time scorer. So it was neat to see my name on the scoreboard with a nice picture, to be part of the tradition, because this tradition is incredible. And by the way, to be clear, I did not win a Super Bowl. I was part of the team that with Joe Montana that went to the AFC Championship game, but the Chiefs in their wonderful wisdom gave me an opportunity to be able to wear a ring that some would consider pretty cool. And but I certainly am just a bystander, cheering on an incredible era in Chiefs history, where I think we've kind of taken over from the Dallas Cowboys. Sorry, Dallas Cowboys fans. I think we're America's team now.
Yeah, they are looking really good. Hard to beat for quite a while. And I don't know what's going on with Buffalo, man. I've been a Bills fan since I was a kid, and we'll see. But anyway, talk. I love the. I was gonna go somewhere, and I completely forgot where I was going with this. Talk to us. Well, first, I just want to say this because, man, you've probably experienced, like, or you tell me, did you expect, like, the life that you've put together? You're a kicker for the NFL. You're an all-time leading. You're working in the White House. Like, did you always know you were going to be up to big things like that, even as a kid, or like how did
I
you
did know. I felt like God just wanted me to do things that mattered, good things that mattered. I don't
always,
want to put
as
too
a
much
kid?
ego into it. It was just like I have to do this. It's a more I have to do this. And I did know I was going to make it in the NFL. A big part of my story, which is so human, is that most of the good things are created after going through lots of rejection. That's part of the formula, because when you make it after lots of rejection, like Tom Brady, being drafted in the 6th round is one example, you just appreciate things better. And you're hopefully a little more humble, and you're always working to get better. And then it's not just better on the field. It's what can I do with this stage to do good things? My aunt had cerebral palsy, my Aunt Margaret, and I thought it's time to do something. My agent was Lee Steinberg, and I thought he's all about what can the athlete do to give back to those that helped him. Back again with that idea of the mentor, who are the people that helped him or her see their lives on a bigger scale to do more good things, not just the egotistical trophies, but the best trophy of all, which is using your stage. And so we started Kick with Nick for cerebral palsy. And then, every week you'd see a kid that was learning how to tie their shoes who had cerebral palsy and had some levels of spasticization. And yet this was a victory for them, and really teaches you to stay grateful. Stay grateful, everybody. It's hard. We got to stay grateful. We got to intentionally think about the good things that would happen in the midst of the adversity, because God did not promise a lack of adversity. He promised that sense. If you remember, Jesus in the boat in the middle of the storm, never losing his calm while the disciples are freaking out. To be the calm in the middle of the storm is the hardest and such a crucial, beautiful thing to do and be.
So I want to go there too for a minute, because you talked earlier about David Stewart saying he never had any fear when he was out there. Did you experience fear?
Absolutely. There is a eternal voice in our head, and it's a voice with ourselves and with God, and it is about our purpose. And so the discipline to persist is to teach to listen to the quiet, still voice, to be able to identify it and to listen to it, so that one applies oneself and sticks with one's training and one's discipline, as opposed to the chaos that many of us are infected with by all of this misinformation and all of these, ugly messages and distracting messages in life itself today, because of social media, because of the culture itself. Yeah. So fear is, I think it's, it's one of those things that are messages. It's what you do with it. And at least in Dave Stewart's vocabulary, it didn't exist. For me, it existed. It was learning to get used to that unique framework where you're
Mm.
naked and alone with 80,000 people. You're out there by yourself, and you got to just focus on what you can control. That's everything, right? Focus on what you can control, your perceptions and your accuracy, your goals and your actions.
Mm.
And you'll still be human. 80% means I missed 1 out of every 5 kicks, but I almost never missed inside 50. And, I tried to be that dependable person for my team. I was most of the time, the great majority of the time, and I was very proud of that, but I could always get better. And what's really cool is there was an article on the cover of Kansas City Star magazine in 1990, and I just turned 34. And the article was Nick Lowery is one of the greatest kickers in NFL history, but at 34, is time running out? And my performance said a resounding no, it ain't. I went from 76% when I qualified as most accurate kicker, when the original percentages were down in the 60s, up to 76%. And then after that, in the 80s, in the 90s, I was 85%. I got better with age. The analogy is always like a fine wine, but it was always just looking to get better. And then playing with Marty Schottenheimer and my teammates, the Derek Thomases of the world and Duran Cherries of the world and Christian Okoye's, and, is being part of a winning team, being in the playoffs every year in games that mattered, and putting us in the playoffs, 2 years in a row with game-winning field goals against the San Diego Chargers. And, those are very gratifying. And once again, they affect then your stage to help others as well. And that's where it's beautiful.
I want to bring you back to that moment. So you're the kicker. Like this, it's funny because being a Bills fan, I always remember way back when they lost that last Super Bowl. All the guy had to do was make the kick, and he missed the kick. Right? You're in that moment. It's on the line. You got to make the kick. There's 80,000 people screaming. Right? What's going on in your head in that moment, and how are you shaking? Or are you just like walk us through that?
You better not be shaking, but you're controlling yourself. But I mean, once again, this is also media, right? So media focuses on you win, you lose, you make it, you don't. Well, actually, the kicker for the Buffalo Bills had never made a field goal on grass over 40 yards. So, and they had 2 consecutive timeouts, and he hit it wide right. Well, yes, he didn't make it. Guess what? You don't want to hear this. We're human. Well, what I have been saying, I would have said, I would be saying to myself, trust your training, left foot at the target and explode, attack the ball. And I'd like to think I would have made it. No guarantee, but when you're bold, when you trust God's gifts and you're disciplined, that's when good things happen. And please show me one person, including Joe Montana, including Michael Jordan, including the greats, including Tiger Woods, the greats of all time, when they didn't miss a putt, when they didn't overthrow somebody, when they, didn't hit the game-winning 3-point shot or whatever it was, and that's really how we come back. We learn, we come back, we learn, we come back. Kobe Bryant, in the midst of his premature death, there's so much wisdom from quotes from him. The Mamba mentality, the idea of loving the constant, lifelong pursuit of greatness as a human being first, manifested through how you adore and you prepare. Adore your career and prepare every day.
So, talk a little bit more about that. When you say adore, why do you say that?
Because you can drown in negative thoughts. I missed the field goal, or they criticize me even though I'm leading the league in scoring, or whatever it is, right? And when it's not about that, it's not about external factors and what other people are saying. It's about your love of this gift, this treasure that's God given, because it's a God-given gift, because God enables us and to use our gifts to help others, to connect to others. And that, by the way, that word connection is really important today. You don't hear that a lot in social media. And yet the truth is there's an attempt. You can call it the devil if you want, but it's certainly negative energy to split us up, to divide us, when America is the best country on the planet in terms of potential, and it has so many great people in it, and we agree on more than 80% of the most important things. And we have to remember that, because when we go through tough times, and I've done a lot of work with veterans with this, horrendous suicide rate that's going on. And by the way, increases in suicide for almost all groups. It's when you don't feel connected that you go to that dark place. And so helping us connect to others. I work with the homeless now, Champions for the Homeless. I love, check it out, Champions Homeless for the Homeless, Nick Lowery. We've done it for 18 years. I love it because it's God reminding me my capacity, my supernatural talent, skill, gift is through Jesus' Spirit to help connect to other people so they realize they're not forgotten, that they are connected, that we are connected. We are their family. So that's really what it's all about, is to rework our notion of success so it connects to others, starting with our family, starting with gratitude, and then starting with others, because that's what real power is. That is power. That's power.
I love it, man. Talk about, so we have a lot of business owners on here. This is almost all business owners, right? Salespeople, real estate, mortgage, insurance. So there's times when you're going after the big client, right? Like, or in your situation, I'm assuming there were kicks you missed that,
yep.
And then you had to, and I don't know if there, I don't, unfortunately, I maybe should know, but I don't know if there were any game winners that you missed or game.
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
Great story. So we're playing Cleveland, and it's an important game. It's Marty Schottenheimer's first year with the Chiefs, and we're playing back in Cleveland after his excellent 10-year career as head coach for the Browns. And the game, it's 10-7, and I hit a 41-yarder with 4 minutes left to tie the game. Okay, it wasn't a very pretty kick, by the way, but it went through. And the field conditions were terrible, but no one cares about your excuses. Thank you. And, I was not prepared because our offense had been so terrible that we could connect on a huge play right near the end of the game. So we're in field goal position. I run out for a 45-yarder, and it's into the open end of the lake. I think it's Lake Erie, but anyway, wherever Cleveland is. And I'm trying to make that field goal, and it hooks at the last second. Oh boy, but somebody's offside. So then it's 40 yards, and I nail it again, and it's headed right towards it, and it hooks left again. So I couldn't believe it. It just didn't make sense.
I feel like I remember watching that game.
It felt so horrible. Now we're in overtime. And I mean, literally, there was probably 6 inches of mud. It was a terrible, condition, but I had a 48-yarder in the other direction, badly missed that. So I missed 3 field goals, officially 2. And the next day, even though I'm most accurate kicker in NFL history, in one game, in a matter of minutes, suddenly a half-page cartoon, or almost it seemed like half-page cartoon in the Kansas City Star the next day, with me, number 8, with a spring coming out of my head, like I somehow had gone mental. And I found out later that my new holder, Steve Pallure, actually thought that he was supposed to hold the ball tilting left rather than right. And but God was teaching me a lesson, because I did the right thing, which was I didn't think there was anything wrong with the hold. And I only found that out a year later. But what I did do, last game of the season, Joe Namath was broadcasting. We're playing, it's on NBC. We're playing the Miami Dolphins. It was freezing temperatures at game time, which when it's 32 degrees in Miami, it feels like 10 degrees. And I kicked a 41-yard field goal from the right hash to give us a winning record, 8-7-1, because we tied that other game that I had such a terrible end with. And the next year I said, I'm never going to feel this again. This is the worst feeling. I felt like I betrayed my teammates. I choked. I'm never going to have that feeling again. And I trained really hard, and I really did a lot of work on my priorities and how my thought process and emotional process worked. And I developed more of an impregnable fortress here. I stopped doing distance running. I gained 10 pounds. I got stronger. And I wanted Marty, who was not a man who was going to do a lot of, rah, good job, Nick. although he would compliment you here and there, but I wanted him to come up to me. I didn't want to say anything. I wanted my performance to speak. And he came up to me about midway through training camp and said, "Man, you look stronger." He got this look on his face. And I ended up leading the league in scoring, 34 for 37, broke the record for most field goals, led the NFL in scoring, kicked the game-winning field goal in the Pro Bowl, kicked the game-winning field goal to beat San Diego to put us in the playoffs. And, I kicked at a level I never thought I could have. And so that lesson, even though in the end, if I'd known that Steve Pelori tilted the ball left, which as a kicker and you're right-footed kicker, that makes it almost impossible for the ball to do anything but hook left. But I didn't know that, and it didn't matter. The lesson was the one I needed to learn. And so God positioned me to go, I have to humble myself, to work harder than I ever have, not only physically, but mentally, so I can be at a new level, so I'm impregnable. And there are quotes in the Bible about, being that shield for us, that spiritual shield for us, so that we are impregnable to the negativity and we are warriors for all the good things. And, it turned my career. The Arrowhead Stadium filled up every year starting in 1990. And, we've continued that, of course, for most of the last 34 years. And we're 4-0 this year, by the way. I love the symmetry that it's the Chiefs are 4-0, and this is your episode 400, David. So, but anyway, so that miss was the best thing that happened to me. And we have to do the hard work, painful work sometimes, to be honest with ourselves and ask, how can I be better? How can I do things that really matter, that really make a difference? And how can I be so prepared that nothing can get in the way?
Yeah. So I just want to share something you just reminded me of. So about a month ago, I was working on this. I went to a real estate brokerage as well. And I was working on this expensive high price listing, and I met with the seller twice. And, we just didn't, it was one of, he wasn't trying to connect with me and have a lot of rapport. He was just all business, right? He was looking so he was interviewing a lot of realtors. And at the end, he said to me, he said, he goes, "I appreciate everything you did, blah, 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 but I'm going in a different direction." And it really bothered me. But it only bothered me for a little while, but then I had to go back and I look at myself, Nick, and I say, okay, what am I missing? And what I had realized is that I had this process that I've used. I've been doing real estate 23 years, and I kind of got away from it and was just doing only training and coaching and going on and doing events. And then I went back to meet with this guy after being out of the trenches for a couple of years. And I had gotten away from my process. The process, the same, like what you're talking about, like having that routine, the same things I always did, like have the pre-qualification call, make sure I show up with this document, make sure before I get there, I have this conversation with them. All those things that I normally did, I hadn't done. And so what I did was I learned a lesson from it. And I said, you know what? I lost this one, but I'm not going to lose another one again, because I'm not doing my process, because I'm not using my process.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's kind of similar to what you're doing out there, right? Like you got better as a result. And I believe it made me better as a real estate agent.
The next 3 years after that horrible multiple missed game in Cleveland, I had 24 in a row. I had 21 in a row the following season, and then I was 22 for 24. So I made all pro teams all 3 years, kicked the game winner in 2 Pro Bowls, and all those games mattered with the Chiefs. So, it really gave me a sense playing big games that mattered in a full Arrowhead Stadium and with a real team and with a real coach. Marty Schottenheimer, I think, should be in the Hall of Fame. But he was the best coach I ever had. And that's saying a lot, because Marv Levy was my first coach. But like me, in his own way, like so many of us, he had to be fired, if you will, from one job or have a negative outcome, do some soul searching, come back as the Buffalo Bills head coach a few years later, and become a head Hall of Fame coach, taking them to 4 straight Super Bowls. So we can always choose to let it kill us, to let us downgrade us and how we look at ourselves, or say, wait a minute, I'm a child of God. I have unique gifts. What are those gifts? Let me do the work to make sure I'm using those properly and consistently, and making sure it helps others find their own.
So 2 more things today, Nick. I know we planned about 45 minutes for this conversation, so I'm not. You talk about God a lot. So talk to us about, like, have you always been kind of God focused? Has it always been part of your routine?
Not so much. I mean, initially, my parents, I was accolade at St. Albans School. My parents put me through communion and all of the different things in Episcopalian church, but they didn't talk about it. My dad was from a family of cowboys in Colorado and Utah, and my mother was British Anglican, and they modeled their behavior, but not hardly any talk about Jesus, etc. And frankly, a lot of people can talk, and it becomes more self-aggrandizing. But just being around people that made me comfortable talking about it. One of them was Jessie Coulter, the widow of Waylon Jennings, who I dated for about 10 years. And today's kind of a sad day because Jessie and I were friends with, and she's still been lifelong friends with, Chris Christopherson, who died yesterday. And I spent time with her, but she was so authentic with her faith that really helped me get more comfortable. And then people like Tim's story and others like that, just looking at your life as what really resonates and won't ever change, and being more clear about that. And hopefully that's one of the gifts of getting older.
Amen to that. Yeah.
It's a level of humility. I've had 5 joint replacements. I am a body that won't always stay young, but I can stay young here and I can stay young here. And that's what matters.
Amen to that. Hey, my friend Shantae we got some people on Clubhouse. My friend Shantae's here, but she's it's funny. Oh, there she. I don't know if she has a question. She usually has a question, so I will introduce you to Shantae. You have a question for Mr. Nick Lowery.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be able to speak with you and listen to a lot of your story. I think it's beautiful, and I think it's wonderful with what you're doing with the homeless nonprofit thing that you have going on as well. There's not there's not a lot of people who have experienced life the way that you have, and are still willing to be out there and give back as much as you are doing.
Thank you. I love it.
It's wonderful. And I am curious, how did you go about getting involved with that? And that's my first question. My second question is, are you in the Phoenix area?
Yes, I'm in Scottsdale. I had a chance to go with Jimmy Walker, and actually my next door neighbor. These are the unbelievable things in life. I mean, I've had next door neighbors, Shantae, growing up, starting at the age of 6, Justice Byron Whizzer White, best friends with John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy, who led the NFL in rushing, both for the Pittsburgh Steelers and 2 years later with the Detroit Lions, and then happened to finish #1 at Yale Law School the same year and became a Supreme Court justice for 31 years. That was one. And then in 2005, I think it was 2005, a guy named Muhammad Ali moved in 2 doors down, and I got to drive him all sorts of places and take him to lunch with his sister-in-law, Marilyn, and took him to a Kansas City Royals Dodgers game and had him introduce something. I mean, just all sorts of amazing things with one of the greatest people who transcended his own religion because he realized God was there for all of us. I could go on and on about that. But Jimmy Walker put on Celebrity Fight Night with Muhammad, and Jimmy Walker asked me to come down and speak at St. Vincent de Paul, the homeless shelter. And I thought, this is a great organization. There's a by the way, a big thing to look for is stable, positive, consistent leadership. And I'm still working with the same people that I was 18 years ago at St. Vincent de Paul. We served over 110,000 homeless. What we do is we have 5 special events a year. Always, always, always. I believe consistency and doing it for a generation is when you turn an intention to make a difference in the world and turn it into social capital, which is what Harvard, I got my master's at Harvard at the Kennedy School of Government. Harvard calls, those values that are so deep, they're beyond words, but you're turning into something that's a new social asset for the community and for those that are homeless. And so we add, let's see, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, and twice in the summer. This year we did it July 28th and September 22nd, just last week, a week ago. I just love the work. And what it does is we hand out 1,000 flowers. We have a beautiful band playing great music. We have 200 plus volunteers looking them in the eye. As Oprah might say, we see you, we hear you. You are important. You're the most important person here. And then we hand out 1,500 pairs of socks, 1,000 pairs of underwear, backpacks. We have 8 hair cutters, 8 acupuncturists and chiropractors, ice cream, popcorn. We even have a couple murals dedicated to homeless veterans because 40% of those at St. Vincent de Paul are homeless veterans. That's another subject altogether. But my goal and what I say to all the, as we say, a group prayer before each Champions for the Homeless is the most important thing is not a mercenary transactional thing you do where you hand something to that person, that homeless brother and sister. It is looking them in the eye with true love and saying, what's your story? How are you? I see you. And it's been transformational for me. I just get so much blessing in my heart. It just heals me. And I hope it heals those people that do it as well. It's just a profound experience. And what we've done is we've helped put the homeless people in with a sense of humanity. People are seen as human beings, unlike what happens too often in places like Los Angeles and San Diego and San Francisco, where the homeless are the homeless, as if they don't have unique, complex individual stories. When somebody says, I want to hear you, I want to help you, but they say, I want to know all the complexities of your life, that homeless person knows that person's really looking for me as a human being, as an individual. And that's where healing can happen in mental health. And for all too often now, it's not mental health. It's not addiction. It's just the economy itself that's made it. We had 91,000 evictions last year in Phoenix, totaling about 250,000 people who were temporarily desperate and homeless, if not, permanently to some degree. So yeah, I'm passionate about it. For those of you that think we don't have an economy issue, for every one person leaving homelessness, 2 are entering. So it's important stuff, and it just blesses us with a sense of staying grounded in our success. Our success is there for one reason: to help others, to help heal others. And as we do that, we heal ourselves.
That's awesome. Shante, thank you. I always appreciate you popping in here, and thank you for the question, and thank you, Nick, for what you do, brother. I mean, that's just awesome what you're up to, right? That's it. Talk to us about your book. It's Naked in Front of 80. What I wrote it down.
Naked and Alone with 80,000 people. It's coming out in a couple months, and it's about a combination of sort of seminal events in my life that helped me see what was more important, including the great mentors like Dick Johnson, who I haven't mentioned yet, who's been such a great influence on me, who died back after my 10th season in the NFL, but helped me keep saying, never give up, never give up, never give up, never give up. And that's how I sign my autographs. It's also about how to focus. It's also about aligning yourself, principles of Think and Grow Rich. I'm in the Think and Grow Rich movie, by the way, 3 times. How to align yourself with the deepest values, because God's put these chemicals in our brain that turn dirt paths of purpose into super highways, because we know there's something intrinsic in our soul that knows we're doing what we were meant to do. So that's the journey, and I've been so lucky in my life, and I'll never stop doing it. And I want to stay grateful to people like you, helping tell my story to help others find their story, but also people like Tim Story and David Giad and Joe Mendoza and the people with World Shakers, because each of them is really dedicated to being the exact opposite of what some people are trying to convince us, that this world is coming apart when we are coming together.
I love it. I've never said this before on a podcast. Tim's been on twice too, but I mean, if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I want to learn and check out this World Shakers thing, just send me a message and I will make sure I'll get you an invitation. Like, we'll get you in as a guest to come check it out.
We've had a couple people try, and they're only about 100 on there. So Tim, we let Tim and Joseph, decide who, but it is exclusive because they want to keep it that way. But we want to make sure everybody knows about it and at least connects to some of the people that are part of World Shakers, because that's our job.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, unfortunately we can't just let anybody in, but if you're interested, reach out to me or Nick,
Great.
and we'll definitely see what we can do.
Absolutely.
Nick, how do people get a copy of your book, brother, and how do people connect with you?
Well, I can't release that about the book yet. I'm not allowed to, but
Okay.
check it out and take a look in November. It'll be a good time. And Nick Lowery 88, NickLowery 88. I've got 1 million followers on Instagram. Come join our family there, or Nick the Kick, Nick Lowery on Facebook, or Nick Lowery on LinkedIn. But what I try to do is simply tell stories like we've been talking about today, just, things going on in my life, and hopefully things that connect with you where you are. And I love coming to schools and to companies to help them get even more aligned with what really matters, because every one of us knows those moments when we've been successful, we got that trophy, and yet it felt empty.
Mm.
We don't have to feel that way anymore.
Man, amen. And so I'm gonna get a copy of your book as soon as it comes out, and then I want to get you on again to break down your book.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna
Thank
do
you,
that.
Sante.
Yes, Shantae, appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I'm actually in Tucson, so I'm actually looking you up right now.
All right. Well, our next one's going to be on Thanksgiving morning at 9:30. So find me on either Instagram or Facebook, and I'll give you all the details. I put them out there a lot, or LinkedIn.
All right, and final question, Nick, what does path to mastery mean to you?
Path to mastery, I would define it the way Rafael Nadal does, which is stay hungry and humble. That I'll tell you a very fast story, because to me, this man, Arthur Mayer, was one of my favorite professors at Dartmouth College my senior year. And he was 94, and he taught the history of film. He was an incredible storyteller. And his wife, Millie, was 88, and she'd come to every lecture. And I would accompany him from time to time from his house, which was about a half-mile walk, to the lecture hall at Dartmouth 101. And I'll never forget, at the end of this beautiful hour-and-a-half lecture, I'm walking back with him, and he's 94. He's not walking too fast, but his entire mentality was, "Hey, Millie," speaking to his wife, "how'd I do? How can I get it better?" And she'd go, "Oh, these stories were great. You forgot that one story about Edward and blah, blah, blah." And I want to be that way when I'm 94 and when I'm 104. How can I get better tomorrow? Because in the end, as Joseph Campbell would say, the meaning of life is even less important than feeling fully alive. And feeling fully alive, to me, is thinking, how can I get better tomorrow? But also staying grateful for how we are today, with all these beautiful gifts that we've struggled and carved out meaning from, and also carved out a way to empower us to help others in their path as well, the way you're doing, David Hill.
Amen, brother. I love that. Great answer. I'll see you in the community, man. World Shaker.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.